I hit 62 that day, and all I craved was a low-key supper with my son, his wife, and a couple of pals. Just tasty dishes, cozy vibes, and maybe a quick cheer to another year of holding it together without crumbling. Little did I know, that quiet birthday dinner would unravel a betrayal so cold, it would change my life forever. But instead, I ended the evening in stunned silence, gazing across a flickering candlelit table, as my only kid boldly claimed something he had no right to. The night kicked off innocently enough. The restaurant was one of those hip spots Jessica chose in Portland, with bare brick walls and dangling string lights. The waitstaff tossed around Buddy like we were old friends. I'd barely settled into my chair when Jessica shoved a gift bag my way. Tissue paper puffed up like a prom dress. Tucked inside was a tiny baby onesie printed with "World's Greatest Nana." "We figured it's time to start prepping the nursery," she said, her eyes sparkling, her voice sugary sweet. "Right, Ethan?" He grinned way too smooth, like he'd practiced in a mirror, and gave a nod. "Yep, especially since we'll have extra room soon." I blinked, confused. "Extra room?" Jessica leaned closer over the table. "We're just so thankful you're on board, Susan. Not every mom would be this selfless." The table fell hushed. My brow furrowed, puzzled about what I'd supposedly signed up for. Before I could open my mouth, Ethan stood, clinking his fork against his wine glass. "Hey everyone, can I have your attention for a minute? Here's the part where I need you to hit that subscribe button and share in the comments one life lesson you think everyone should know before it's too late. Thanks." Ethan's voice carried just enough to make the waiters freeze. Tonight isn't only about toasting my amazing mom's birthday. It's also about a huge shift for our family. Jessica whipped out her phone, recording. "We're moving into Mom's condo," Ethan announced, his smile practically glowing. "It just makes sense. She doesn't need all that space anymore. And we're growing our family. It's such a blessing, honestly. So generous." He raised his glass. "To the woman who made it all possible." Glasses clinked around me. I sat frozen, my fork dangling uselessly in my hand. Ethan locked eyes with me, his grin almost manic. "Right, Mom?" The room's weight crashed down like a trap snapping shut. Jessica's camera zeroed in on me. Every pair of eyes waited for my response. I gave a weak nod, not because I was okay with it, but because my mind short-circuited. My brain just stalled out. I felt like I'd been shoved into a spotlight for a play I didn't sign up for. I forced a tight smile, sipped my wine, and prayed the moment would pass. It didn't, not really. The chatter moved on, but I sat there, my face draining of color, the food tasting like sawdust. Jessica dove into plans to overhaul the condo, color palettes, crib setups, swapping out my dated drapes. She giggled and said, "Don't worry, we'll let you swing by. You can keep your herbs on the patio if you like." Ethan chimed in. "We'll give you plenty of time to clear out, no rush." They hadn't even consulted me. They'd decided, declared, and broadcasted to my friends that my home, the place I'd shared with my late husband for 35 years, where I'd grieved, laughed, and patched up a leaky faucet myself, was now their baby starter pad. I slipped out halfway through the cheesecake, claiming I felt off. Ethan shot me a look like I was overreacting, but I brushed it off and said I'd manage. Jessica offered to order me a rideshare. I said no thanks. I hobbled 4 blocks in heels I hadn't worn since forever, my feet screaming and my chest tight. But it was the only way to quiet the chaos in my head. By the time I got home, my condo didn't feel like mine anymore. It wasn't safe, wasn't home. I locked the door, checked it twice, then once more. Their voices looped in my mind, Jessica chuckling about my drapes, Ethan saying I didn't need the space. My husband's photos sat on the shelf, staring at me like they knew something I didn't. I slumped at the kitchen table, hands pressed flat against the wood, unable to budge for nearly an hour. When I finally stirred, I yanked open a drawer I hadn't touched in ages. My husband's old files, legal papers, wills, emergency contacts. I hadn't rifled through them since his memorial. There I spotted something I'd forgotten. A power of attorney form from 3 years back, signed when I was laid up with bronchitis. Ethan's name was scrawled on it. My stomach churned. I fired off a text to my lawyer at 1 a.m., asking if it still held water. Her reply pinged in at dawn. "If you didn't cancel it, yes. Let's talk." It hit me then. Ethan had been poking through my files during his check-ins last year, when I'd been too tired to notice. That's when it sank in. Ethan wasn't guessing or asking. He was rolling out a scheme. I didn't sleep a wink that night. I kept picturing Ethan's face as he tapped that glass and made his big reveal, looking at me not with warmth or doubt, but with certainty, like I was a deal already sealed. I curled up on the couch, my robe cinched tight, staring into space as Jessica's words echoed. "We're just so thankful you're on board." I hadn't agreed. Not with words, not with a glance, but I didn't shut it down either. I let their show play out. That was my screw-up. And now it was snowballing. When I checked my phone at sunrise, Jessica had posted a slow-motion video. Pans of my living room set to sappy guitar strums, captioned, "Our family's next adventure." Waving goodbye to Nana's place, hello to our new nest. My sofa, my bookshelves, my window with the sheer curtains. 42 comments. So sweet of her to hand it over. She must be thrilled. I scrolled until my lungs locked up. Ethan had already emailed me a relocation plan. A checklist of stuff they wanted gone by month's end, suggested move-out dates, and a link to a Pinterest board labeled Cozy Nursery Vibes. It had mock-ups of my bedroom gutted down to a crib and a glider. I hadn't even answered about the dinner yet. I hadn't given my okay, but they sure acted like I had. I dialed my lawyer before 8:30 a.m., and the second I mentioned Ethan's name on that old power of attorney, her voice turned razor sharp. "You need to get in here today, Susan." I dressed like I was gearing up for battle. Crisp trousers, button-up blouse, and heels that clicked loudly on the floor. I hauled every document I could find. Folders, property deeds, every scrap of paper tied to my name. She sifted through them, her lips pressed tight. "You never canceled this, Susan. Legally, he could make moves for you if someone says you're not fit to decide." "But I'm fine," I shot back. "Exactly. But if he got a doctor to jot down that you're showing memory lapses or acting confused, even just on a form, he could drag this to court. It's not common, but it happens, especially when family property's at stake." My gut twisted hard. She peered over her glasses at me. "We need to nix this form today, and you've got to watch every word you say and every paper you sign. Everything goes through me. Got it?" I nodded, my throat too tight to speak. When I got back to my Seattle condo that afternoon, my key jammed in the front gate. For 3 agonizing minutes I wiggled and twisted it, my heart racing until I realized the lock was just sticky from the chilly weather. I felt like a fool, but for one awful moment I wondered if they'd swap the locks. That night I didn't bother with dinner or tidying up. I sank into a chair, my mind racing, and jotted down every sacrifice I'd made for Ethan. College fees, wedding bills, even that $5,000 loan they never repaid. I wandered into my bedroom and tugged open the closet. Up on the top shelf sat old photo albums. I grabbed one and flipped through it. Ethan in his peewee soccer gear, Jessica at their engagement bash with her flawless smile, me and my late husband toasting with wine glasses in this very condo. I snapped the album shut. Then I grabbed my phone and shot Ethan a single text. "We need to talk, and not through public stunts or mood boards." No response for 5 hours. When his reply finally popped up, it was just a thumbs-up emoji. That's when it hit me, I wasn't his mom anymore. I was a hurdle, a locked gate, a name on a deed he needed to shove aside. And he wasn't going to bother asking again. For days after that awful dinner, a thick envelope slid under my door while I was in the shower. No knock, no buzzer, just the faint rustle of paper on the floor. I didn't spot it until I stepped out and nearly skidded on it, still dripping wet. I tore it open right there in my towel, my pulse already pounding before I unfolded the pages. It was a document labeled, Initial Property Transfer Agreement. My name was pre-filled, along with Ethan's and Jessica's. The only blank line was for my signature. Clipped to it was a note in Ethan's tone, but clearly drafted by someone else. "No hurry, just need this signed by Thursday for the bank to move forward. Thanks, Mom." Bank stuff? That meant they weren't just scheming. They were already using my condo as collateral. I sank onto the edge of the bathtub, the papers trembling in my hand. I texted my lawyer a photo of the document, and she called me back in 10 minutes flat. Her voice was steady but firm. "He's acting like this place is already his. If you sign that, it's done. Don't even leave it lying around, shred it." "He slid it under my door," I said. "Then he's building a paper trail to make it seem like you're willingly involved. Don't reply, don't engage in writing." That night I dove back into my filing cabinet, determined to dig through every document tied to my name. That's when I found it. A medical directive packet from 3 years ago, from when I was hospitalized with a lung infection. I'd signed a few forms in a haze, mostly standard stuff, but tucked inside was a limited authority clause naming Ethan as my proxy for financial decisions if I was incapacitated. It came flooding back. He brought the forms to my hospital bed, hooked up 2 and 4, saying, "Just sign these so I can handle the insurance nonsense." I hadn't even skimmed them, just scrawled my name to make him stop hovering. My lawyer confirmed it later that evening. If they found one doctor to claim I was scatterbrained or disoriented, they could try to question my ability to manage my own affairs. It wouldn't be a slam dunk, but it could tie me up in court. And if I'd accidentally agreed to anything via text or email without realizing, they could twist it as consent. I went dead still. I replayed that birthday dinner, the way Jessica grinned while recording me, the way Ethan kept speaking in past tense. Mom's on board. She's letting us take it. She said it's fine. It wasn't careless. It was calculated, rehearsed. He was spinning a story they'd been crafting behind my back, and I'd let it slide. The next morning, I locked down my credit, secured my bank accounts, and revoked every shred of authority Ethan ever had. I scrubbed him from my emergency contacts and changed the passwords on my financial apps. I started documenting every interaction, screenshotting every text. I stopped replying to his messages but saved them all. That evening, I called the building manager and asked who'd used the security gate the night before. He paused, then said, "Ethan used your spare key. Said he was checking on you." I hadn't asked him to. I wasn't injured and I had no clue Ethan still had a spare key. I asked the building manager if we could swap out the lock, and he said it'd need an official request. So I filled out the paperwork that same day. That evening, I gathered all my critical documents and stashed them in a steel lockbox, sliding it under my bed for safekeeping. I couldn't risk a single slip-up that they could twist as proof I was slipping mentally. I began logging every single exchange with Ethan and Jessica in a notebook, just in case I ever needed to prove I was sharp as a tack. One night, I even jotted down a fake shopping list: milk, eggs, bread, and tucked it into the journal with the date to anchor my handwriting in time. I wasn't losing it, I was being targeted. They weren't just wishing I'd hand over my condo, they were crafting a case to snatch it without my say-so. 2 days later, the buzzer sounded, and when I peeked through the peephole, Jessica stood there, grinning like everything was peachy, clutching a shiny gift bag and an iced coffee with Susan scrawled wrong on the cup. I cracked the door just enough to talk, not to welcome her in. "Thought I'd swing by," she chirped, her voice dripping with honey. "Just checking on you, and I grabbed your favorite caramel latte extra ice." She pushed the cup toward me, but I didn't budge. "You didn't call first," I said flatly. She gave a breezy laugh, shrugging it off. "I figured a surprise would be fun. You've been super quiet lately." I stayed silent, hoping she'd take the hint and leave, but instead she nudged the gift bag my way. But something in her smile felt off. Too polished, too practiced, like she was playing a part she'd rehearsed. "It's supplements," she said, her eyes gleaming like she was sharing a juicy secret. "For pregnancy. We're trying, but you probably guessed that." I blinked. "You're expecting?" She pressed a hand to her stomach, playing it up like she was already glowing, though it had only been weeks. "We weren't gonna spill yet, but after the dinner." She looked down, faking a tearful pause. "It meant the world that you're giving us your place. It feels like fate." She wasn't pregnant. I knew it the second she said it. Her eyes were too sharp, too hungry. And later, when I stepped aside for a moment and let her in, she dropped her purse on the counter and marched to the fridge, grabbing a seltzer and chugging it without a glance at the label. No one that early in a pregnancy, all nervous about a baby, would be that careless about bubbles or caffeine. But I kept my mouth shut and just observed. She started strolling through my condo like she already owned it, rattling off plans for where the crib would sit, how she'd repaint the walls, and how she'd tear out the skinny coat closet to open things up. I stood in the living room corner, rooted to the spot, listening to her remodel my home like she was staging it for a quick sale. "This bookshelf," she said, trailing her fingers along its edge. "We could donate it, yeah? It's kinda old school. My husband handcrafted that shelf 34 years ago." I didn't say a word. She kept going, poking into drawers, glancing into the utility room, sizing up which furniture was worth keeping. I trailed her quietly to the hallway. "This room should be the nursery SAP," she said, waving at my knitting room. "You know, before you get worn out from all those stairs. Babies need a chill vibe, not a ton of stuff." That's when something inside me cracked. But I didn't raise my voice. I just asked, "Jessica, when did your doctor say you were pregnant?" She blinked rapidly, caught off guard, then let out a nervous chuckle. "It's super early, like too soon for tests. I just feel it."
No ultrasound, no blood work.
"We're going to the clinic Tuesday," she fumbled. "You'll be the first to hear, promise." That promise hit me like a slap. I watched her carry her seltzer back to the living room, scrolling on her phone while her purse sat open on the kitchen counter. Inside, I spotted a beige folder. When she slipped into the bathroom, I peeked and saw copies of my condo's layout, marked up with new furniture plans, and a printed Redfin estimate of its market value. She was quietly gathering intel to flip it later, thinking I'd never catch on. They hadn't even moved in, they were already planning to flip it, maybe to some investor. I snapped a quick photo of the papers, slid the folder back, and plopped onto the couch before she returned. "Wanna stay for dinner?" I asked casually. Her eyes widened, then she grinned. "That'd be awesome. Should I text Ethan?" Nah, just us girls, I said. I dished up some freezer lasagna and poured her a glass of flat wine, letting her relax. Then I watched her leave around 7:30, still chatting about paint colors and baby names, totally clueless that I'd seen her folder. I locked the door behind her and dragged my bulky knitting machine in front of it. I wasn't afraid, I was locked in. I opened my phone, scrolled through my screenshots, and created a new folder labeled Evidence. This wasn't family anymore. It was a scam and I had proof. The next morning I was up before dawn, not packing bags but gathering intel. I called my old friend Clara, a retired realtor who now lived 2 counties over in Tacoma, mostly fussing over her tulip garden and dodging her ex's emails. Clara didn't bat an eye when I rang at 6:03 a.m., just said, "Lay it on me." And I did. I spilled everything from the birthday ambush to Jessica's fake pregnancy act, the papers in her purse, and the story they were spinning like some heartwarming family saga. Clara listened without cutting in, then said, "You gotta move fast before they realize you're onto them." She offered to help me sell the condo quietly through her network of discreet buyers. No public listings, no online ads, just hush talks with serious cash investors. "You'll take a hit on the price," she warned, "but it'll keep them from meddling or fighting the sale before it's final." I said yes on the spot. Over the next 4 days, I played the part of clueless mom. I sent Ethan short, cheery texts. I hearted Jessica's latest nursery posts on Instagram. I shared a photo of my supper one night, roast chicken and green beans, with a caption about loving home-cooked meals. I wanted them to think I was still pliable, still sweet. Meanwhile, I lined up an inspection for a modest place Clara found, a 1-bedroom cottage in a quiet coastal town in Oregon, far from anyone who knew me or owed Ethan a favor. The listing showed a dated bathroom and a weathered deck, but I didn't mind. It was secluded and it was mine. The seller, a widower ready to move closer to his kids, agreed to a cash deal if I didn't nitpick. We sealed it with a handshake the next afternoon. While Ethan thought I was glued to baking shows, I was quietly arranging a bank transfer and booking movers for furniture I hadn't told a soul I was taking. I hired a guy from my church, Tom, who owned a pickup and didn't pry. In one afternoon, he packed up my husband's old tools, the antique china, and the crates of family photos from the storage closet. I told the building manager I'd be gone for a while, maybe forever, and not to share a word with my family unless I gave the green light. He gave me a funny look but agreed. Then I swung by the leasing office and swapped my emergency contact to Clara. I set up a P.O. box in the new town for my mail. I arranged for USPS to forward everything starting 3 weeks out, so no one would notice the switch. I even called the power company and scheduled a shutoff, claiming I was moving in with a cousin to recover from surgery. The lady on the phone said she was sorry to hear it, and I didn't bother correcting her. Every day I kept my expression soft, my voice warm. I let Ethan think I was frail. I let Jessica think I was touched by their plans. But behind their backs I was dismantling their whole scheme. On the 5th day, Jessica sent me a video of her lounging on my living room sofa, chatting about making the space cozy again. The caption read, "Our future home, but always Nana's legacy." It had 3,000 views. I didn't shed a tear. I snapped a screenshot and filed it in my evidence folder. That evening I left a subtle clue. An empty duffel bag in the entryway, where Jessica would spot it next time she showed up unannounced. She'd assume I was packing for a quick getaway. She'd tell Ethan. They'd think they still had the upper hand. They were wrong. I was out of there before the week ended, and by the time they caught on, the keys would be in someone else's hands, with nothing left but a locked safe and the faint smell of jasmine clinging to the drapes. It all came together over 2 weeks of hushed calls with Clara, culminating in a Thursday afternoon when I signed with the title company, locking in the condo sale for a week later. Cash only, no strings, just as she'd arranged. I'd barely hung up when a sharp, demanding knock hit the door. I didn't budge. I stood in the hallway, still as a statue, listening. The knock came again, then Ethan's voice. "Mom, let me in." I stayed put. I knew he had his key, but I also knew I'd changed the locks 3 days earlier, a detail I'd kept to myself. I heard the key fumble, fail, rattle, then a pause followed by a heavier thump. "Mom, we need to talk," he said louder. I didn't flinch. Eventually, he gave up on the lock and started talking through the door. "You're dodging my text. And Jessica's losing it. What's going on?" I stayed silent, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. "We heard about the realtor," he said, his tone turning bitter. "Clara reached out to a friend of ours. You're selling the condo? Are you for real?" I didn't answer. "You're screwing over your own family. Do you get that?" More silence. Then his voice dropped like he knew I was right there. "If you don't open this door and act like an adult, I'll take this to court, I swear." He left after that, but not before sliding an envelope under the door just like the one from before. Inside was a type notice, a request for temporary occupancy evaluation, signed by a legal aid from some firm I'd never heard of, with a highlighted line about a pending potential cognitive guardianship claim. I set the paper on the counter and called my lawyer. She picked up on the first ring. I read her the key line. She let out a long breath. They're stepping it up. They're trying to question your mental fitness. This isn't just pressure. They're building a legal case. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with my lockbox open, sorting papers, scanning files, and recording a video of myself calmly explaining every financial move I'd made, complete with dates and timestamps, sending it to a secure cloud folder my lawyer could access. I attached every bank transfer, every screenshot, every text message. I explained each decision clearly, no hesitation, citing dates, times, and documents. I included the sale contract, the offer on the cottage, and the home inspection report. It was draining, but it had to be ironclad. I wasn't just guarding my money, I was defending my sanity, because the second someone calls you confused, people stop hearing what you actually know. The next morning, Jessica showed up alone. She didn't bother knocking, just stood in the hall, shouting loud enough for neighbors to crack their doors. "We're trying to start a family and you're being heartless," she yelled. "You promised us a home. You said we could have it." She pulled out her phone, and I saw the red recording light flashing. I opened the door just a sliver, enough to be seen but not heard clearly, and said one word, "Go." Her video captured that, just her sobbing, me looking like stone. That night, she posted a clip titled, "When Family Turns on You, Pregnant and Homeless," with soft music and slow transitions. It racked up 5,000 likes in hours. Comments poured in. "How could a mom do this? Selfish boomer hogging everything. She doesn't deserve to be a grandma." I saved every post, every comment, and sent them to my lawyer. The next day, Ethan texted me one line. "Sign the attached to avoid court, and we'll drop this." It was a PDF, a deed transfer form, already signed by him and Jessica, with my name blank. I forwarded it to my lawyer without opening it. Then I texted Ethan back for the first time in days. "You'll hear from my lawyer soon. Don't reach out again." Then I powered off my phone. By dusk, I had my bags ready, my keys in hand, and a note for the new buyers. "This place is yours now, but I'm taking the quiet with me." I left at 4:17 a.m., just before the sky started to lighten, when the streets of Portland were still, and the only noise was my suitcase wheels scraping the uneven sidewalk outside the condo I'd called home for 35 years. I didn't glance back. Clara met me in a nearby town with a latte and a grin that spoke volumes without saying a word. The cottage was a 3-hour drive, nestled by a quiet pond, wrapped in pines and stillness. When I got there, I didn't start unpacking right away. I just stood in the bare kitchen and let out a breath so deep it felt like I'd been suffocating for weeks. I didn't touch my phone, knowing it'd be a mess, and I was spot on. When I finally powered it up 4 days later, I had 42 missed calls, 22 voicemails, and over 70 texts. Mostly from Ethan, some from Jessica, and a handful from unfamiliar numbers. The group chats twisted my stomach the most. Aunts, uncles, old friends, even my own brother had been roped in. Screenshots were flying. Jessica had shared that video of me telling her to leave. Ethan sent a long rant about how I'd ditched them just as their baby was on the way. How I'd yanked their home out from under them and fled like a spineless jerk. They were still pushing the pregnancy lie, and the worst part? People were buying it. I didn't answer a single message, but I read every one, and the letdown hit like ice water. Folks I'd cooked for at Thanksgiving, loaned money to, or called when their kids were sick were now saying stuff like, "Hope you snap out of it soon," or "Blood's supposed to stick together." Ethan wasn't just rewriting our story. He was painting himself as the wounded hero. But then something surprising happened. My cousin's daughter Tara, who never got along with Jessica, texted me privately. "Aunt Susan, this all smells like BS. You good?" I shot back, safe and done. She sent a heart emoji and added, "Holler if you need me in your corner." I didn't tear up, but I felt it, that quiet, steady support. It reminded me not everyone was suckered. The next morning, my lawyer called to say the sale was final, funds wired, deed filed. The condo was officially someone else's and never Ethan's. I asked about the guardianship threats and she said, "They won't dare file now. You've outplayed them, and their sob story won't hold up in court once we lay out the real timeline. But update your will ASAP." I'd already done that a month ago. Everything now funneled into a trust for older women rebuilding their lives, covering my cottage, my savings, even the tiny annuity I'd held onto for years. Ethan and Jessica were not just cut out. They were legally barred from fighting it. That night, I emailed the final will to my lawyer, then poured myself a glass of iced tea and sat on the cottage's front deck, watching the sun sink behind the evergreens. It was peaceful, not empty, just pure, open quiet. My phone pinged one last time before I shut it off for the night. It was Ethan. No hello, no sorry, just, if Dad were here, he'd be ashamed of you. I didn't bother replying. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what his father would have said. You should have done this years ago. It started with a delivery. No sender, no note, just a thin white box left by the cottage's front door. Wrapped in tissue and a bough like some kind of olive branch. Inside was a framed ultrasound image and a card reading, "Can we try again? J&E." It looked legit at first, but I'd seen that exact image before. Jessica had posted it on a baby app months back as a dream board placeholder. They'd printed a fake, mailed it, and framed it like a trophy. I set it on the counter and didn't touch it again. 3 days later, an email popped up, subject line, "Supper." The message read, "We'll be near you this weekend. Let's sit down, no pressure, just family." I didn't reply. On Friday evening, headlights lit up the dirt path around 6:15 p.m., just as the sky turned golden. From the kitchen window, I watched a gray SUV pull up at the end of the drive. They stepped out, overdressed for a drop-in, Jessica in wedges, Ethan in his old sport coat, clutching a wine bottle. I didn't open the door. I let them knock, first gently, then harder. "Mom, it's us," Ethan called. "We just want to talk. We drove all this way." I stood inside, lights off, hands gripping the back of a chair, not budging. Jessica's voice piped up, fake crying. "You're cutting out your own grandkid. Is that what you want?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. They lingered for 19 minutes, I clocked it. Finally, they left the wine bottle on the stoop and drove off without another word. The label read, "Reconciliation Merlot." I dumped it down the sink. That night, Ethan sent one last text. "You got what you wanted. Hope losing your family was worth it." I didn't respond, I just screenshotted it, added it to my evidence folder, and deleted his number for good. The next day, I grabbed coffee with my new neighbor, Diane, who'd moved here after splitting from her husband of 35 years, and now ran a small candle shop out of her shed. She cracked up when I told her about the fake ultrasound. "People get wild when cash is on the table," she said. "But you didn't give in. That makes you a threat to them now." I nodded. Threat felt fresh. Felt right. That week, I bought a raised garden bed, planted rosemary and basil, and signed up for the local food co-op. When my phone buzzed again on Thursday, it was an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, but curiosity got me, so I played it. It was Jessica. "Hey Susan, it's me. I know things got ugly, but we're still hoping to keep a door open for the baby, for what's ahead. Call me." I deleted it. The only door that mattered was the one they'd never cross again. It wasn't some big dramatic scene. No fancy law office or stunned relatives gasping. Just a calm meeting over drip coffee at my lawyer's desk on a rainy Tuesday morning. The final signature locked in what I'd already felt in my gut. Ethan and Jessica were cut out completely. No loopholes, no second chances. Just a clear, binding document stating everything I owned, from my cottage to my savings to the brass picture frame by my bed, now fed into a community fund I set up in my husband's name, helping older women escape family financial or emotional abuse. My lawyer, Rachel, handed me the hard copy, double-checking each page. "It's sealed," she said. "If they try to fight it, they'll crash and burn. Your paper trail's bulletproof." I took the folder, its weight like a shield. 3 days later, Tara called. "I think Ethan's onto it," she said. "He's posting those vague, whiny quote memes again. Betrayal stings most from the ones you love kind of garbage." And Jessica changed her Instagram bio to "family by choice only." I let out a sharp, quick laugh, my first in ages. "Let them post their cryptic quotes," I told Tara. "They lost any claim to me when they tried to take what wasn't theirs." A week later, I got a letter from the nonprofits board confirming the trust was active, named the Silent Haven Fund, with my initial deposit already supporting its first recipient. I read the documents 3 times before filing them in a drawer next to my coffee mugs. That night, I cracked open a bottle of seltzer and sat on the deck as a cool breeze rolled off the pond, flipping through old photos of the condo I no longer called home. A new family had settled in, young, unassuming, happy. No nursery schemes, no hidden agendas, just genuine smiles in a tidy living room. No edits or filters. In the corner of one shot, I spotted the bookshelf my husband crafted years ago, still standing tall. They hadn't tossed it, they decorated it with succulents. It felt like a door closing softly. My phone pinged later that evening with a text from Ethan's old college buddy, of all people. "Heard what they pulled. You did the right thing cutting them off. Wish my aunt had done that before her kids bled her dry." I sent back a simple, "Thanks." The truth was, I hadn't just saved myself. I'd put a name to something countless others endure in silence. I was done staying quiet. While they wallowed in their bubble of made-up grudges, I'd rewritten the story they thought they could control. I didn't give them a battle. I gave them nothing, and I was starting to see that silence spoke louder than any tantrum they could throw. 7 months later, I stood barefoot on my cottage's back porch, cradling a steaming mug of peppermint tea from herbs I'd grown in a planter I built myself, watching a flock of birds glide across the sky like a ribbon stretching over the water. I hadn't heard from Ethan or Jessica in 3 months, not since the final court order went through, banning them from contacting me about inheritance or estate issues. They didn't fight the will. They didn't try again. I think they finally got it. I was gone, not just in body but completely, as if the version of me they'd once played had packed up and vanished for good. My days look different now. Mornings tending the garden, afternoons helping out at the local community hub, evenings learning poker with Diane, who insisted I had a ruthless streak beneath my calm demeanor. I'd made real friends, people who didn't ask about my bank account or grin only when they wanted a favor. The cottage wasn't just a hideout anymore. It was a fresh start. I cooked hearty meals again. I laughed without holding back. I slept without keeping my phone within arm's reach like a lifeline. The day before I turned 63, I got a letter from Tara enclosing a picture of her newborn son and a note that read, "If he grows up with half your grit, I'll know I did okay." I stuck it on the fridge with a magnet shaped like a daisy and let myself cry those soft tears that don't burn. The kind that wash away the last bits of hurt. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote a check to a local shelter for women escaping financial manipulation, signed it, and added a note. Make it count. She escaped. As the sun sank behind the pines and a gentle wind stirred the chimes I'd hung on a cedar beam, my phone buzzed once more. An unknown number. I didn't tense up. I didn't even check it. I turned the phone off and slipped it into a drawer. I didn't need it anymore because this life I'd carved out, no spotlight, no script, no one cheering for what they helped shatter, was truly mine. The cottage was still and so was I. For the first time in years, that quiet didn't feel like a void. It felt like calm. Solid.
Permanent.
Exactly what I'd chosen. And as the stars blinked above the pines, I knew I hadn't just escaped their grasp. I'd reclaimed my life, my peace, my story. Exactly what they'd never touch again. If you like this story, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and write in the comments what impressed you the most about this story. Also, we recommend you to listen to our previous story. It is even more shocking. Just click on the box on the left to play it. Thank you for watching.